My name is Kevin Atherton, and I'm the artist who made the television Repeat. And I make video art, I do lots of different kinds of things, including public art, but I've always had an interest in television and popular culture. And for me, I didn't want the work that I made to just be accessible to a select group of people. I wanted to make work that, if you put some effort into it, anybody could get. And so I've always watched television. I'm kind of a generation that remembers television. I remember as a kid us getting a television, and we were one of the first people in the street to have a telly, and it's been a part of my life. So this piece, the television Repeat, I pretend to be a kind of stand-up comic, but the person that I am is a white TV screen. So, you know, it looks unusual that there's nothing on the telly, but I wanted to be the telly. And a lot's to do with the kind of head size of a television. You know, the newscaster is life size when our head is close shot. So I take on the persona of the television, and he's meant to be quite aggressive in the way that I think stand-up comics are aggressive. And so I did that in the 1980s, you know, 25 years ago, and I've done other things in my life and in my work. But this whole exhibition and the project Rewind, which is a research project in Dundee, asked a number of artists to come back and look back at the work. And I didn't want to come back and, in the way that I looked at the past, get too nostalgic about it. I wanted to come back and do a piece of work that would be like the work we were looking back at. So given that this white television screen, the television, was a bit like an entertainer, I thought it would be interesting to do an interview, and that the interview would be a bit like being on the Parkinson show. And it would be a little bit, you know, deliberately sad in that I'm like this person who wants to get back on the road. I want to revive my career. At some point I say I'm on the comeback trail. So I wanted it to be funny, but it's not just about funny in terms of the gags. It's kind of humorous because it's absurd. And David Garcia, who is the person who interviews me, is the interviewer in one of the clips that we look at. So we see him aging, and you would see me aging too if you got to see me physically. You just get to see the monitor. But it's kind of like watching the television grow old and watching a man grow old, and television's flat screens and all of that. I've changed a lot as a monitor. So it's layered, and it doesn't matter if you don't get all of it. If you get some of it, then I'd be happy.
I'm Zoe Redman, and I'm an artist. I live in practice in France for the last 20 years. I work mainly in painting, performance and video. And I started making performance in 1977 when I was an art student at Coventry studying with Steve Partridge. Basically I was interested in not doing painting or sculpture, creating something, a new medium, something that would be different from painting and sculpture. So I like the idea of doing time-based work. And at the time I was a student with Steve Littman, and together we kind of came up with ideas how to do things. And I was really into performance and film, projecting film onto me, and anything that was ephemeral. It didn't have a kind of lasting effect or duration. She, Her, I started organically from the work I was doing, which was performance-based. It seemed very obvious when I started making time-based work. There was also an issue about me being a woman artist, because there were so few women artists working in any kind of art practice at that time, it seemed to me. And so I felt that it was important that I made works which were issues about myself as a woman. And so the performance were about that, and then I became pregnant. And so of course I wanted to make a work about my journey of becoming a mother, and somehow in relation to the landscape.
I'm Steve Partridge. I'm an artist, an academic. I'm a professor of media art at Duncan College of Art and Design, Dundee. In the early 80s, I moved up from London to establish a video department. So that was in 84, and it's gradually developed as a strength, I guess, within the art school as a whole, and it's well known for that.
The piece Atherton then, just tell us a bit about that.
Well, that was this is it's a version of a piece that was originally shown across the road in the original transmission gallery as part of a sort of artist-led event within an artist-led space. I think you were involved, were you not, in those days? Yeah. And it was a coming together of people interested in video and film, even maybe a bit of performance, and people who've sort of drawn together over the previous couple of years, I guess. Interested in making, producing, showing work. Obviously I was a slightly older generation, but I was there to, in hopefully my own right as an artist, but also as someone who was trying to enable the next generation. So it was, very much DIY in those days. We had to put the whole thing together, and I thought it was quite exciting sort of time. This sort of video wall idea was something that wasn't, I suppose most people's experience of video wall now would be it's a convention centre, I imagine, or an airport, or Channel 4 News behind Jon Snow. But in the art world, it was something that happened actually quite a short space of time, I think. There were some very crude projectors around in those days, and they were awful. I mean, the picture was just not worth looking at. So it wasn't until really the mid-90s that projectors became anything that would attract artists, I think, because they just didn't have the quality, the aesthetic. But like a lot of artists, myself included, one was interested in exploring video which could give you some sort of scale. So if you start stacking monitors together, you can get a different type of scale than just one TV set. And it also breaks away from that domestic connotation of the TV in your living room, I guess. So there's those sorts of nuances and things that are at play. So, but as a term, as a sort of proper noun, a video wall is something a bit more than that. It's something that's programmable. And they were really a bit later than this show that we're talking about, transmission in 86. They didn't really come around until about 2 years later. So, because the technology wasn't there, where you could program and maybe put one image across the whole bank of monitors and things like that. So what we were doing was a sort of precursor to the technology, a sort of hint at it. And the three works that are on show here are all show aspects of that, trying to use different channels of video in a mosaic form to build a sort of composite image.